Hi, I'm Hannah Burkhart. I'm here today with Mr. Mark Boyle, the voice of the Pacers. How are you today, Mr. Boyle?
I am well, Hannah. How are you?
Well, thank you for coming out to talk with us today. And I know you were very busy during the season with the Pacers. And so why do you take time off in the off season to come talk to these children in schools?
Well, I would like to think I would do it anyway. I feel it's something important, but something happened to me early in my career that resonated with me. When I came into the NBA, I was 27 years old. I was the youngest guy in the league, and two guys that were much older than I was and much more experienced and much more accomplished. One of them was Bob Ryan, who worked for the Boston Globe. You may know him from ESPN. Marv Albert, who's been around forever. Those two both came up to me and asked me if there was anything they could do to help me. And that really made an impression for me. I would like to think I would do this anyway because I enjoy speaking to high school students and college students and such. But for two guys like that to reach out to me, I thought it was the least I could do to reach out to younger people.
That makes sense. Especially since they're learning their way as they go, it's definitely going to resonate with them if you come in and talk to them, especially as such a big figure as you are. And so it's game day. Say it's game day with the Pacers. How do you prepare for a game? Or how long does it take?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It doesn't just start on game day. We're locked in all the time. I'm trying to learn things every day. I'm on the internet reading, I'm talking to people. But generally, over the years, my process has evolved where I'm working about a week at a time. I'm trying to pay attention to the entire league, but if we have 4 games against 4 different teams, for that week I'm focused on those 4 teams. So I'm reading their local newspapers, making notes about their players, talking to people about their team. And I've never really quantified this, but if I were to put a number on it, I would guess that I spend 3 to 4 hours in preparation for a broadcast.
Now, it's summertime now, not particularly during season. What do you do to prepare for anything in the summertime?
Well, it's not as intense, but it's still daily. I'll get on the internet every day, and oftentimes it's only 20 or 30 minutes because in the summer, a lot of times there's nothing going on. But I want to make sure if there is something going on, if there's an interesting feature story about somebody where maybe I can learn something new about a player that might be useful later. Players are changing teams all the time. I want to keep my rosters updated. But it's not nearly as time intensive as it is during the regular season. The summer's a bit more laid back.
And we all know you're an excellent voice on air. How much preparation goes on behind the scenes that no one sees? Like, how do you gather your information and what goes into it?
Well, most of it is behind the scenes. As I mentioned earlier, reading stuff on the internet, newspapers, feature articles. There's a million blogs out there now. There's a lot of NBA exclusive sites, that kind of thing, talking to people. If, for example, let's say it's Tuesday and the Pacers had a game against Cleveland on Friday, I might call a broadcaster or a writer or an assistant coach that I know that's involved with the Cavs just to get some idea of what's going on with them. It's an ongoing process, and much of it is behind the scenes.
Now, in the age with technology and more podcasts and digital media, I know that you're still on live radio, so how do you deal with all the other evolving technology?
Well, during the actual broadcast, we don't get involved with it too much, but we've gotten involved with social media. We have a website. I've written for the website. I've done podcasts for the website. We're involved in Twitter and Facebook. I'll tweet sometimes during games. And so we try to stay on top of the technology. But once the broadcast starts, it's still old school. We're still doing a radio broadcast. But outside the broadcast, we try to get involved with a lot of the emerging technologies.
Now, with the people listening in on your show and the game, how do you keep them engaged as an audience?
That's a good question, and I don't really know how to specifically answer it. I try to make the broadcast interesting. And I know that's sort of vague and generic, but I feel like people are tuning in to find out what's going on. And so that's my primary focus. If you tune in, I want you to hear within a few seconds what's the score, how much time is left, just the basics that you tune in to get in the first place. But we try to be entertaining. I have a color guy, Slick Leonard, who's a legendary figure in Indiana. I have a sideline studio guy, Pat Boylan, who's a very bright, sharp guy. So during free throw sequences, when the ball is dead, we might try to get involved in some sort of a conversation. I can't specifically tell you how we try to make it interesting, but we do try to make it interesting beyond the basics.
Now, can you take us through the journey of your childhood and how you got to be the voice of the Pacers and where you are today?
Yeah, I'll give you the condensed version. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a baseball player. And then I realized I wasn't quite good enough. And then I wanted to be a coach, and I realized I didn't have the patience. And then I wanted to be an attorney, but I didn't want to go to school for 8 years. And broadcasting was always kind of in the back of my mind. My dad was in broadcasting, and so I knew a little bit about how it worked. And I knew that I could speak and write, and I liked sports. So I decided that I wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster. And I got my first job when I was 19. And then the first 8 years of my career, I moved around. I was in Montana, and northern Minnesota, Iowa, central Minnesota. Then I was in Minneapolis, in New York, and St. Louis. And then I got here. So the first 8 years, I moved 7 times, and now I've been here for 28 years.
Wow, that is a very long time.
It's a very long time.
Is it normal to be with a team that long?
It's not unprecedented, and I wouldn't even say it's rare, but it is unusual. It's a difficult business sometimes to keep your job in. It's a little bit like coaching. Even good coaches have often been fired. The same is true in our world. A lot of good broadcasters have been fired. I've been fortunate that I haven't been. And so for me to be here for 28 years is a long run, and I feel grateful. It's a great organization and a great franchise. But it's difficult to hold these jobs because there's only 30 of them. Everybody wants them. The people making the decisions about who should have them are often fickle, and so you could be out at a moment's notice. But I've been really lucky to have been able to stay here this long.
And you said that you are a play-by-play broadcaster. So does it ever get difficult during a game to be play-by-play, especially with basketball that's moving so fast?
No, it's actually easy because games like basketball and hockey, which I've also done, they're action-driven games. There's always something going on. I wanted to be a baseball broadcaster, and one of the reasons I found that appealing is because baseball is the total opposite. There is action, but it comes in 3 or 4 second bursts, and then there's a minute between plays, and there's a whole bunch of other time to tell stories and entertain, and that always appealed to me. But an action-driven game like basketball is really, as long as you know the rules, is pretty easy to stay with.
Especially with action-driven in the 90s. I was born in 2001, but in the 90s, the Pacers-Knicks rivalry.
Yeah.
What was it like broadcasting from Madison Square?
It was fantastic because now well, in every business, money's important. But over the years, in an effort to generate revenue, many teams and buildings have moved us upstairs. But back in those days, we were right down on the floor. And so you were right there when the action, and you could see how intense it was and how physical it was, and the games were great and the teams were really good, and often they were competing for a spot in the finals. It was really, really engaging, and it was a lot of fun.
With the intensity you were talking about, was the environment ever hostile in those games against them?
It depends how you define hostile. I don't think anyone ever thought they were going to get beaten up, but there was some harsh language, and when you're the visitor in some of these buildings, and it was the same for these teams coming into our place, fans feel part of their responsibility is to help the home team, and sometimes that involves people going a little bit over the line. You'll hear things that you think are inappropriate, even vulgar terms, but you never felt like you weren't safe. So, but yeah, it was hostile and intense.
Well, as fans ourselves at Greenfield, we have our own radio station. So what makes Indiana basketball so special to you? Because I know every day we go on air and talk about how it's special to us. What makes it special for you?
Well, I have a different perspective because I didn't grow up here. I think if you grow up somewhere, you tend to understand whatever a part of the culture is a little bit better than an outsider. But I've been here long enough now that I think I can appreciate it. It's sort of like, this is just my opinion, the people here seem to take ownership in the sport. They take pride in it. They think it's their game. Just like people in Texas think football is their game, or people in Minnesota think hockey is their game. So they have pride in guys that come from here, and there are a lot of guys in the NBA who come from Indiana now. And I just think the game is part of the culture, and the people here take great pride in that because it is part of the culture.
Now, what do you think is the biggest challenge today's youth faces today?
I don't think it's all that different from when I was young. Now, there are different challenges. There are much more, for lack of a better term, there are more hurdles to jump. In my day, we had 3 TV stations. We didn't have any of the things you have to deal with. But the overall challenges, I think, are the same. And it's the competition. You're always competing for something, whether it's grades or scholarships or jobs, and that never changes. And dealing with disappointment is still a challenge, as it was in my day. People tell you no all the time. You can't have this job. Someone else gets this scholarship. How resilient are you as a young person? How do you stay the course and not get discouraged? How do you maintain confidence, and how do you continue to go after your dream or your passion even when it seems too difficult? Those challenges have existed forever. Now, I'm not your age, so I don't know this firsthand, but it seems to me like being young now, other than that general observation, is much more difficult than it was when I was young. We didn't and I don't want to get into a big social discussion here, but we didn't even have drugs when I was a kid. If you smoked a cigarette, you were going to prison. So we didn't have the same challenges. We didn't have to fight off all of these outside sources. I think it was a little bit easier to be young when I was young.
Now, you were definitely resilient. You have been named Indiana Sportscaster of the Year 3 times, been named the top talk show host by Indianapolis Monthly, and inducted into the Indiana Sports Writer and Sportscasters Hall of Fame. These are all fantastic accomplishments. When your career ends, what legacy do you hope to leave behind as the voice of the Indiana Pacers?
Well, those things are all nice because I think we all appreciate being acknowledged for our work, but those aren't the things that resonate with me. If I ever die, which is a big if as far as I'm concerned, I will retire though at some point. I would like people to say, if to the extent they remember me at all, that guy was good at his job and he provided us with some enjoyment. That would mean more to me than winning awards or anything along those lines, because we are entertainers, we are communicators, and that's one of the things we're trying to do. We're trying to resonate with our audience, and if people said, hey, Mark was pretty good and we liked listening to him, that would be plenty good enough for me.
Well, thank you for coming in and talking
Thank you,
with us
Hannah.
today.
I enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Bryce Ratliff here today with Coach Adam Sherman. How you doing today, Coach?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, coming from Walsh and Marion, how big of a change is it coming from a collegiate level to high school?
The way that we do things, as far as structure goes, is really the same. A little bit less intense at times, just because of the amount of time we're allowed to spend with you here in the football realm than we did in college. Obviously, I teach, which is different. Before I was just a coach. But I kind of replace all my recruiting duties that I had at the collegiate level with the classroom, which I enjoy, and it's allowed me to be home with my kids a lot more and those things. I really enjoy this more because of the passion that we have here in Greenfield. I didn't always feel that at the small college level. You were never the biggest show in the city, and here I feel like that's the case with our high school sports. We're the biggest thing in Greenfield, so I'm really enjoying that, really enjoy the community.
Very cool. So, coming into a program that was 4-7 last year, what are you planning on doing to hopefully turn that around?
It's not me that has to turn it around. It's you guys. It's the community. It's the kids in the school. It's the players on our team. All I'm trying to do is maybe give a little bit of my life lessons to them, to you, and you guys have to change the behavior in order to change the culture, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. Yeah,
so you said that there's part to do with the kids. So, we only had 6 seniors last year. This year we have 28. How big of a difference does that play?
Huge, and you can already tell just with the amount. And we had a good number when I got here. I think we had about 12 or 13. But we've had a lot of guys who are big impact players on us for our team right now come out. And that's just a relationship building that we were lucky to have with me being in the weight room when I first got here. I got to interact a lot with a lot of guys. So they've chose to be part of what we're doing, and it's been awesome. But the senior leadership we have is unmatched.
That's awesome. Yeah, personally, I love going out there every day and playing with my fellow teammates. There's a lot of us, so it's a lot of fun. But on the field, we hear OPG all the time. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a lifestyle, and everyone always asks what it is, and it's very easy to explain, but it's really hard to live out. But the O is for optimism, P is passion, G is gratitude. And the way that we break it down is, optimism is the most important thing there is. You got to wake up in the morning thinking that whatever it is that you have to do, you have to do. You're the best in the world at whatever it is that you do, whether it's playing free safety or being an economics student. We want you to feel like today you had a presentation. We want you to feel, hey, I'm going to kill this presentation because I'm the best presenter of what I'm presenting that there's ever been. And so that's a choice, and what we're trying to do is teach everyone that it is a choice. Passion, that's what gets you out of bed in the morning in the first place. So you have to love what it is that you're going to do. Some people dread going to school. Well, you got to go anyway, so you might as well be passionate about what you're doing and doing it as best as you can. When it comes to football and other things, passion is what's driving us, what's driving me, what's driving you. So, we feel that's really important. So that's the second one. And then the G is the gratitude, and that ties everything up. You've heard this a lot. We talk about, the 2 words in the English language that can change the world is thank you. And that's more of an action gratitude than it is a word play. So we try to get out in the community and do as much as we can for one reason only, to give back and say thank you for support.
Exactly. We did the church thing last week where we went and helped the church, and I think we did the Avenue of Flags.
Absolutely.
And there's a third one, I think. What did we do?
We've done the cleanup.
Yes, the cleanup around the school and stuff.
School.
But
yep.
So that's really cool and stuff. And we have another phrase you have is all-purpose with purpose. So can you explain that real quick? Or
everything that we do, and it's on purpose with purpose. Everything that we do is with it's intentional. So there's never a situation in which we put you guys in practice. Yeah. Or in a life simulation, or there's always a reason for what we're doing in the community. And then we want to make sure there's substance behind it. It's a substantial act. So there's never an accident in our program. So there's never, why did you run this play? Or why did you say this to that kid? Or why did you purchase these pair of shoes? Or why is this happening? There's always a purpose for everything we do. So, and that's something that I think is huge in life skills.
Okay, Coach. So with the official season starting this Friday, is there anything that you really have a goal or expectation for?
For the game itself, I want us to go there. I want us to be classy. I want us to worry about ourselves, and I want us to play well. If we, live OPG, man, it's going to take care of itself. So, and that's what we talk about. We don't really talk a lot about winning, as you know. We feel it's a byproduct to everything else that we're going to do. As far as the season goes, the only goal we have is perfection. And so if we pursue perfection, everything else is going to take care of itself. So we're going to stay in that realm. I'm not going to get too overly about anything else we need to do. That's where we're going to stay.
So there we go. So like I said, the season starts this Friday, and we play Eastern Hancock. So is there any, specific things for this game that you're planning on doing at all, or?
We're just going to play as best we can, man. And,
there we go.
If you want to know, you'll have to find out on Friday.
All right. So how important is this game, not only to the team as a first game opener, but to the community here?
I'm learning more about it as I go. Obviously, I'm not from here, so the rivalry is being taught to me daily. But it's huge because it's the first game. It's huge because, they're 20 minutes away. It's a county school. I think every game there is huge, and there's a history in other sports, and this is unique because I think it's the first time we've ever played in football. So there's a uniqueness to this game. So it's a big deal, and however, it's a football game, and it's not a life or death situation. We're going to go out there and we're going to play well. We're going to be us.
Exactly. So this is your first, game as a coach at Greenfield. So what do you think is going to be different from coaching here at Greenfield to coaching back at collegiate level?
Football's football. I don't know. The quarters are a little bit shorter. Other than that, I think I'm approaching the game the exact same way. We've broke down our film the exact same way. We've done our meetings the exact same way. It's been a little bit difficult because of the rain and our field conditions, so we've had to do some things inside, but I'm going to approach it the exact same way.
Okay, so do you have any special policies for student athletes, maybe with academics or anything like that?
Huge, and as you found out and everybody found out yesterday, we're pretty stringent on what happens. And in order to play football here, you got to go to class. If you have a tardy, you have to go get a note from that teacher that it's okay that you were tardy, or there's an assignment or something that they have to do to make up. And then if you have a D or an F, we're going to check with the teacher. And if you're missing an assignment, you don't get to practice. If you don't get to practice, you don't get to start. So that's where we're at.
So you're really looking forward to helping football in youth, in our youth, create more life experiences later on.
Absolutely.
And so how can football benefit us later on in life?
Well, it's the ultimate life simulation because it's hard, it's unforgiving. There's highs and there's lows. The highs are unbelievably high and the lows are unbelievably low. You're going to get judged every single Friday, and you know, there's a lot of kids walking the hallways that get that every day. You get judged for, you know, stuff people don't even know about. So I think it's a good life simulation to be able to deal with all that time management, and you know, that's the biggest thing that we're trying to give back to is the life skill of things are important and people are going to hold you accountable for doing your job. So you know, we're getting there.
So, Coach, what is one attribute you hold yourself and pride yourself on?
Accountability and just love, man. I try to love everyone I come in contact with, and you know, I'm a firm believer. Haven't always been that way, by the way, but I'm a firm believer. Everybody's got a story you don't know about, and I try to treat everybody that way.
All right. So, lastly, what motivates you as a coach to lead this team?
I'm passionate about coaching young men, and like I said, this for me, if it was about winning football games, I would have stayed where I was. I'm excited about being a part of this community. I think it's a great community with a lot of history. I love the people here, and I've had nothing but a great experience since I've been here, and that's what kind of keeps me going. My kids are going to grow up here, and I'm really excited about that.
Thanks for joining us today, Coach.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
My pleasure.
I'm here with Lynn Greenwalt, President and CEO of the Greenwalt Corporation. Lynn, how are you?
Good. How are you, Matt?
Good, thank you. So what company do you work for? Or, like, what exactly is your role at the company?
Okay. Greenwalt Development, we actually have about 3 different groups we run under Greenwalt Development Corporation or Greenwalt Corporation. They're all development, real estate, commercial and industrial real estate related. So we buy ground, develop new buildings, fill it with tenants, and then either sell or we maintain those properties.
So you're, who created this company?
My dad started a construction company in 1978 called Greenfield Builders. We sold that in 2000. We started Greenwalt Development in 1988 and have maintained Greenwalt Development since.
So when did you know that you wanted to go into this?
My dad started the company in '78 when I was a senior in high school, and I went to work through the summers for him. I graduated from college in 1982, and things were really tough with the economy then, so I stayed home and worked. I thought I was going to law school, but it just kind of went into the construction side, and then eventually put the development company together.
So you have a lot of clients from what I've seen. What are some of your clients that most of us would know?
That's a good question. In Fort Harrison, we've had a group called InDesign, which is a very high-end engineering firm. Some people may know them. Here in Greenfield, Jimmy John's, Don Rigo's, AT&T. We also have part of the McKenzie Plaza Center and the professional building on the south end of Mars. So some doctors in there that people might know.
So what is the most interesting client that you've had?
You asked me that earlier. InDesign is probably an interesting group as far as a tenant because they're very high-end engineers. They develop for other groups, and I don't even know all the things that they've done. A lot of things they just can't even talk about, but I know that technology that we use every day, a lot of things have come out of InDesign and their engineering group, so that's an interesting group. At one point, we developed a lot of assisted living projects, and it's not clients, but the residents who would come into those projects or the memory care were pretty neat individuals. A lot of them grew up or served in World War II, so just a whole different generation. It's fun to get to know. I don't know, we've had a lot of interesting groups, but none that just stand out that you might know because we've been pretty spread out. So,
So are you local, or what's your span business?
today we're fairly local to central Indiana. In the past we tried to stay east of the Mississippi. And we had a few projects west, but we stayed pretty much east and kind of south and southeast. So today, Indiana and Illinois, we've sold everything we had in Ohio at this point, so I'm trying to sell everything I have in Illinois and just focus a little closer to home.
So do you eventually want to expand larger or just keep it local?
We've gone from a very large company down to a fairly small company. I would like to see us expand some, but we're going to stay fairly local. Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, probably. We also have some opportunities in Florida we may jump on here in the next couple of years. But.
So what do you want to see as your company goes on?
Right now we're pretty heavily focused on retail. We'll continue to do that. We're trying to get back into the industrial market. Because of the sale of Greenfield Builders in 2000, we had a non-compete for 3 years, and then 9/11 hit, and so we just kind of lost our footing in the industrial market, and I would like us to get back into that. That was very good for us. We've also done a lot of medical office, and I guess even to go back to one of your questions, community hospital has been a good client for us with the community health pavilion here in Greenfield, and we're starting to get back into some medical office, which I'm glad to see. We're also going out and looking at existing buildings to buy, not just develop from the ground up new. So, and that's a little different for us as well. So, I don't know. We're still trying to figure all that out, but it's going to be retail, medical office probably will be our biggest focus.
So where do you, what is the process for you getting a building or doing something with it?
A new building, we'll find a piece of property or one that we own currently. Typically brokers will bring a deal to us, so have a tenant. We'll put a structure together on a lease. This is really condensed, but we'll put the lease together, go find the financing, and build the project, and then do a long-term lease where we actually manage the facility for them. On buildings that we're buying, we look for buildings that are just to have some vacancy in them, so they have some upside for us. We'll buy those buildings, try to backfill the rest of the space and create a little more value in the building. And so it's more just a flat purchase and then some brokerage work. I'm not sure that answered your question well, but
Yeah. So I know that your son is in there. What does he do?
Aaron actually graduated from Greenfield Central. Went to school at Indiana Wesleyan and then on to get a law degree from Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, and wanted to come back home and work in the business. So he's taking care of a lot of the day-to-day legal work, leases, just some odds and ends that we used to send out. So that's been good. And our local attorney, Ron Pritzky, has been very good to help Aaron just kind of learn some of the things that we can do in-house. So he's just learning the business across the board, and it's a pretty long learning curve. It's just a lot to know and a lot to do. So
If people are interested, how can they contact you?
the easiest way is obviously telephone. 317-462-8048 is our office. We're here in Greenfield in the Community Health Pavilion, 740 West Green Meadows Drive, Suite 320. Or I can give you an email address, lgreenwalt@greenwaltcorp.com. So any of those ways, usually they can run us down.
Okay. Well, Lynn Greenwalt, thank you very much for joining me.
All right, Matt.
Appreciate
thank
it.
you. Appreciate your time.